This is my new filter setup that I basically leave on my FX30 all the time now. It is the Nisi Swift VND mist kit, and what I've got on there right now is the 1 to 5 stop variable ND filter and the 1/4 black mist filter. But if for some reason I didn't want the mist filter on there, take it off. If it's really bright outside and 5 stops just isn't enough, now I have a 5 to 9 stop VND. But I'm gonna get out of the heat and then we'll go talk about this. So Nisi sent me this kit for this video, and they actually sponsored this video, so shout out Nisi. But that does mean that this isn't a review, it's more of a showcase sort of video. However, they didn't really give me any specific talking points, so I'm just going to treat it as if I bought the product myself. This is the box it came in, and since I've clearly already unboxed it, let's get rid of that. This case though, I do actually quite like. It's one of those accordion style ones where it's pretty small when it's closed, but then you open it up and you can just see everything. It's actually quite handy. And even though this kit only comes with 3 filters, it can fit so much more than that. So in here we have the True Color Variable Neutral Density Filter, which is a 1 to 5 stop, and I'll talk about that in a bit. We have the 4 stop ND16, which is just a solid ND, the 1/4 black mist filter. I also keep 2 step-up rings in there for my different size lenses. We have the adapter ring that this system comes with in case you want to use either of the secondary Swift lenses without the VND. There's the front cap and a little Ziploc bag with the spare levers for the VND. I also do keep a microfiber cloth in here as well, because microfiber cloth. So the base of this system, like I mentioned, is the 1 to 5 stop VND. It screws right onto the end of your lens, depending on what size you can get this kit in multiple sizes. I got the 82mm size because that's the size of my biggest lens, and then I just use step-up rings for my other lenses. Once it's on there, you can obviously just use it like a normal variable ND filter, and what I really like about it is it's just really smooth. Like the rotation is very well dampened and there's no scraping or anything, so it doesn't like feel like you're just turning metal on metal. And when it comes to that rotation, you have that little lever that just screws into the side of the filter, so you can more easily rotate it so you don't have to like grab the front of it. And it also serves as a bit of an indicator of where you are in the range without having to look at the numbers on the top. If you know that, down here is 1 and up here is 5, you can pretty well estimate whereabouts in the range you are. You can also just unscrew it if you don't want it there, or if it's in the way for some reason. And even without it, it's still pretty easy to turn because there's sort of a little bit of serration on the front, so it gives a bit of grip when you turn the front of it. I also like the fact that it goes down to 1 stop. It's a 1 to 5 stop VND rather than a 2 to 5, which is pretty common, because that means I basically don't have to ever take it off, because 1 stop is enough that you're probably not gonna need to take it off. You can just, maybe just shoot on the high base ISO on the FX30, for example. The only times you'd actually need to take it off is if you're in a proper low light situation where you just need as much light as possible and you don't want to be reducing that by a whole stop from a VND. If the minimum was 2, there'd be more times where you would have to unscrew it because, 2 stops is a fair amount of light. That's like the difference between F2 and F4. Okay, once the VND is on there, now we get to the Swift part of the whole system. Instead of screwing on a whole nother filter, like a 6 to 9 stop, for example, ND, I can take my 4 stop solid ND and just press it onto the front, and now I have a 5 to 9 stop VND. All of the secondary filters have a notch on the back for the lever, so you can still use the lever with the secondary filters, and it also means you can put it on the exact same way every time. So if you're reading the stops, for example, on the 4 stop, or just potentially preventing any inconsistencies if there were any. The solid ND also has markings on it because it comes in this kit. It has 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 stop markings on it, which line up to the dots where they would be on the 1 to 5 stop. So they basically, those markings cover the original ones because, now we're at 9 stops, now we're at 7, all the way down to 5. And that's just helpful so you don't have to do any quick maths while you're shooting. The other filter in this kit is the 1/4 black mist filter, which again just presses straight on the front of either the VND, any secondary Swift filter, or the adapter ring. And this mist filter is not subtle. It'll create a fair bit of bloom around specular highlights in particular, usually light sources, and just give a general softer look overall. As the name suggests, it basically makes it seem like there is some mist or haze in the air. And I think it's a really cool look, and it's pretty popular look as well. But like I said, it's not a particularly subtle one with the 1/4. If you want a more subtle one, there is the 1/8, which I don't have, but I imagine it would look very similar to this, just with a slightly weaker effect. You can obviously stack all these filters on top of each other, like I have here, but if you for some reason didn't want the VND and you just wanted either the mist filter or the solid ND, or maybe the mist filter and the solid ND, we have this adapter here, which basically acts as a step-up ring for the Swift system in particular, because it means you can then just press on any of the filters onto the front of the lens like that, and then you can stack them, or you can have one or the other, or if you get a bunch of them, you could just stack as many as you want. So here's some test footage that I took to show a few different things. First, we have the VND at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stops, all at the same exposure, and adjusting with aperture to keep that same exposure. I noticed it's fairly consistent throughout, and the times where it wasn't exactly 3 stops, for example, could have just been because I didn't quite turn it to exactly 3 stops, because 1 and 5 are the only hard stops, which makes sense. This is what 4 stops on the VND looks like compared to 4 stops on the 4-stop solid ND. And while it may not be very noticeable here, the benefit of solid NDs over VNDs is due to how VNDs work. Basically, a variable ND filter, or variable neutral density filter, is basically just 2 circular polarizers put next to each other, and then you rotate one around the other. So they can have an effect on reflections and screens, for example, whereas solid NDs aren't polarizers, so they literally just decrease exposure. This last example is just to show the color difference between the ND and nothing, because these are true color ND, so they're not supposed to have a color cast. And I just adjusted the exposure using shutter speed, which is kind of one of the reasons why you should use ND, so you don't have to adjust your shutter speed. When it comes to the practicality of this whole system, there's a few things I noticed. The friction fit is pretty solid and it's not gonna fall off, but it's still pretty easy to attach and detach filters. One downside to the whole press-on system is if you do wanna use one of the secondary filters without the VND, then you have to unscrew the VND and screw on the adapter ring. So in that case, it's not really faster than unscrewing and screwing on a whole nother filter. But if you're stacking multiple filters, then this system is going to be a lot faster and easier, especially if you're switching back and forth between different filter setups. Like if you just want some shots with it ND and some without, you can do that very easily. And one other little thing is, while the lever is a great feature to have, I think it would be better if it was on the left side, because I usually hold my camera in my right hand and then the lens with the left. So it makes sense to have the adjustment on the left side. Cameras are built to hold it that way, in your right hand, or if I'm holding in the top handle here, then like my right hand's nowhere near the filter. So to me, it makes more sense for it to be on the left than the right, but that's the way it is. So that is the Nisi Swift VND Mist Kit. There's a link to Nisi's website in the description. If you are interested in this at all, go check that out. Do all the other things. Go watch my last video, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.